I want to touch on what could be a huge topic, and it's a little bit difficult to choose which angle to start from because at the end, of course, everything is connected, as everything is energy anyway, and the whole of existence for anything or any being is about that interconnectedness and exchange of energy at different frequencies. In one way, Thich Nhat Hanh expressed it quite well when he was talking a lot about this interrelationshipness or interconnectedness between everything. And so, at the end, whichever angle or side you start from, you will end up with the same conclusions about what existence is and how beings, especially human beings, live and interact with each other. Also, we will talk about the deepest notion, which has to do with enlightenment. In Buddhism, one way to define enlightenment is called the unconditioned. And there is a reason why only very, very few human beings, unfortunately, reach that stage of enlightenment, of pure unconditioning, because it's the opposite of what your life and existence is about. And ultimately, because you are well trained, educated, and conditioned from the start as early as possible, then it becomes such a huge cognitive dissonance. And totally at the opposite of what you have always thought and believed what you are and what your life is about, which is all conditioning. And originally, it was mostly still self-conditioning. That's why you come up to existence through your karma, karmic energy that comes through life. Different lives. Past karma accumulate. Most of the time it accumulates. That's why it's becoming more and more complicated and more difficult to reverse that. But lately, especially the last 150 years, and especially after World War II, with the technological advancement, it has become exactly the way the leaders getting more and more into the very evil side of existence have come up with so many ways and so many means of conditioning, brainwashing the population, their own citizen, most of the time, through that notion of government, as much as they could, to create the best modern dumbed down slaves. And also have tried to and managed to, let's say, destroy or kill that innate capacity that we have to go within, to introspect and becoming basically quite spiritual, in a sense of figuring out what this whole existence and life is about, and to manage to get out of it, as I've explained other places. which is the purpose of life of a human originally. As a human existence, you have the possibility to become fully enlightened, which is to transcend life existence, the mind and matter. But then, and that's enlightenment, but the point is that the people in charge with those intentions have tried as hard as possible to come up with every means to cancel that capacity in as many people as they could, and it is the greatest majority now. You could see that even so many who think that they are aware or awake, you can see how caught up they are in their everyday life worries and stress and preoccupation and vicissitude, just to confirm that they have been well conditioned to follow what the leaders have implemented. There were a few quotes that I posted about that, and let's say the one thing is, one guy, David Wolf, has written that the reason you don't know that you have been lied to, conditioned, and brainwashed is exactly because you have been lied to, conditioned, and brainwashed. And that's exactly the point and the purpose of that, right? Or there is Noam Chomsky, one of the famous, you call it social studies expert, who has said that, the worst is that people don't know that they don't know, right? At the end, that's where the leaders have the best success. So, so besides the self-conditioning, which is life, again, that's a deeper notion in Buddhism, and that's why it takes some time to come to that at some point. And maybe I will come back to it later on as part of what the Buddhist practice is about, which is to uncondition oneself. But again, that notion of freedom for most people, and nowadays, of course, it's a word again that comes up because of the evolution of the world right now, which is again part of the agenda, of course, to just make things worse and worse and worse, to condition more and more and more the people. Also because lately, at the same time, technology has so much access to information and quick exchange of information between people, which the leaders don't like so much compared to the agenda. So that's why now they are really accelerating the things, and unfortunately the conditioning has worked so well that it shows that it's working to just do it in such a violent and provoking way in the face of their own citizen everywhere and the face of the world. But again, the people complain a bit, but actually still accept it, and that unfortunately confirms that it has worked quite well so far, as things are getting worse and worse exponentially, right? So there is the self-conditioning, and so that's why people who think that, and they know what freedom is about when they talk about freedom or freedom of speech, like freedom to think for oneself, as they say, well, as long as you believe in the self, that's exactly what the conditioning is about. So the notion of self is exactly what self-conditioning is about, and not understanding what the real meaning of life and existence is. And later on, people, they have developed all those personality traits, you can say. And as long as you have this personality, that ego, and those traits that you like to define yourself by, that's exactly the conditioning that you have created. And of course, most of the people constantly define themselves in a very narcissistic way, just a way again that they don't realize. But every time you say, I like this, I don't like that, I want this, I don't want that, that's exactly conditioning, right? And self-conditioning, and that's what makes you not free, because you have made yourself completely addicted, dependent, full of habit patterns, compulsive habit patterns that then you don't know how to get out of anymore. And that's the point of the Buddhist practice, towards the unconditioned, is to get rid of that, the famous let go of those layers. And that's why at the end you can only become unconditioned, reach enlightenment, only when you get rid of that ego. And all those things that you like to define yourself by. That's why you see that the picture of those people who are at the highest level, they're not attached to anything. They won't define themselves by any way or anything. They just are, just alive being, and that's it. That is true freedom, which brings also the ultimate peace and harmony within, opposite of what being a regular human is about. And again, what I explained before, but the notion of suffering, which is the constant stress and anxiety to satisfy to your personality traits and your cravings and your desires and your wants, and then everything that you fear or don't want. But anyway, so that was a bit about self-conditioning and that false notion of freedom that people think they know about. There is no real freedom until you are enlightened, have experienced the unconditioned state. Everything is karma like that. And the more you have developed your wants and don't wants and needs, don't needs, like, don't like, the more karma you have created for yourself. So that is the opposite of going towards freedom, true freedom. But where does it start? Of course, as I said, these people have figured out, thanks to some so-called psychology, science that came up over 100 years ago. And they figured very soon that we may as well start as early as possible, right? Because the earliest in life you start with someone, first of all, as the youngest being, you are taking in so easily every information, right? That's what people like to call growing up. Raising a kid is you are like a blank page, right? When you are so young, and you can ingest everything so easily, and you want to absorb all kinds of information at once. And of course you don't have any referential, no life experience to compare to. So again, whatever figure of authority you have around you, usually your parents, you will absorb that and take it for granted, take it as truth, or whatever they tell you. And that's why the system has figured that, we need to get those kids in the education system as soon as possible, as early as possible, right? Because that's how you can brainwash and condition them. the easiest and basically for the rest of their life, because I guess the earlier imprints in the brain are the one that are deeply imprinted and will last strongly. That will become kind of a new pattern. So that's why it's called education system like that. And in one way, again, as part of the mass hallucination, the conditioning of the masses, most of the time the parents are part of it. Again, you might say that people are different individualities, different personalities, but at the end it's all the same. And it works all the same everywhere. That's the point too, that I will touch on that a bit later, but people think that they're different, that they have different nations, and that's why they compete sometimes and they want to go at war with each other because of nation, territory, or culture. They think they have different cultures or the religions, right? But at the end, it's all about the government, right? And every country, unfortunately, works the same. So every government has the same agenda, of course, which is to control the population, brainwash, condition their own citizens. And it looks different at the surface. That's why people are so proud afterwards to say, my culture is about this, my culture is about that, and this is my culture. But that only shows and confirms a very well programming of the masses, very well established programming, the cultural programming. And that's where at the end also I always thought, for example, humans like to think of themselves as intelligent beings, but ultimately, again, many people are proud of their own language, and they think it's, of course, part of the culture, and that they are very attached to that. But we see how it has created a lot of complication, actually, at the end. Humans, nowadays, we travel so much, exchange so much globally. Language has become a barrier to exchange properly and quickly information. So humans actually are not very intelligent, because you see animals, they speak the same language for their own species, right? Dogs speak dogs' language, horses speak horses' language. So no matter where, they can figure out each other pretty quick, even though they can have a bit of personality and cultural differences with different species of dogs, but yet they speak dog in some ways. So, but humans, again, thinking that they are intelligent through, for example, the development of complicated languages and so many different languages, well, what they have done is that they have complicated everything, again, as part of it. And the relationship have become complicated because of that. So there's no intelligence in that at all. Rather the opposite again, the whole immature pride of being of that country, of that culture, and of their own language, still very unevolved level and very immature way. The day every human could speak the same language, that would solve a lot of problems, of course. But again, anyway, so the point is to start as early as possible that education system with the youngest kids. So there are two parts, but one part I will touch on too, which is again one that is a bit too far-fetched for many. So again, many might have a cognitive dissonance on that, and yeah, a bit too much, yet it's just a reality, the fact of what has been created. So when you're born, actually, usually your parents fill up birth certificate, and unfortunately in some ways, implicitly, this birth certificate is your parents signing your life away to the state. It's the first contract that you have engaged in with the state. And of course, this is again the most sneaky one and the best one, as the first one that contracts you for the rest of your life in some ways, but also because you are just born, you have no say, no awareness, you're not asked your opinion, and your parents, as good product of the system too, well conditioned, they do what they are told by the system, by the authorities. So they do that because actually, as far as the developed world goes, especially, this is how they look at it. And that's why afterwards they make sure to condition you as much as possible, as well as possible, to become a good dumbed down modern slave, obedient to authority, because you are supposed to be part of that system as a labor, to contribute to what makes the nation, and culturally and economically mostly. And so, for example, let's say you are born in one of those developed Western G7 or G20, whatever, countries, and then they assume that your life is worth like $500,000. During your life, you're supposed to contribute to the country and the country's economy to the level of $500,000 to bring in through your work or labor, whatever. And so that's why after they will present it in a way that they provide help. In the third world countries that I see here, they are all amazed that actually the first world countries, developed countries, they provide child tax refund. Like they give money to people for having children. That they are amazed about that, right? But again, there's a reason for that, and it's not to help you. The government nowadays is never here in your own interest. They are presenting everything like that they do that for you, for your safety, for your good, for your health, but it's all for their own interest, for you to become a good pawn on the chess game, to contribute to what the countries have become about. So they expect you to become a good citizen, which is to become a good little bee, working bee, and will bring in enough wealth, or contribute to the wealth of the country. So that's why the developed countries are developed, and because they have developed that system so good. And that's just the way it works. So you expect it to be that, and that's why they will make sure to format you, to brainwash you, to condition you early on through that so-called education system. So that, again, George Carlin, of course, has exposed that very well in his skits. So they will make you believe that you become educated, that you have diplomas that you can be proud of to bring home, right? Ooh, graduation, yeah. But actually, they give you only the knowledge, which is never the very useful knowledge in life for real life matters, but it's only the knowledge and the illusion of choice after whichever career you like, right? Whatever job you want to do, right? What do you want to be when you grow up, right? Just to be part of that system, and they only allow you to move around that so-called freedom within that framework of the options that they give you, and never allow the true free thinking side of you to show up enough or to develop enough to actually see that there is so much in life beyond all this and beyond that system. No, you're not allowed to think outside the box, right? So they give you that box, that framework, which most of people operate within, and Yes, so and they expect you to be a good citizen like that, but good citizen means what it means for them, and it's not the same like what it could mean for you. And also, some people have written things around that, which is a famous thing. For example, one says like it's remarkable how many people believe themselves intellectually superior for repeating what authority tells them. And it's also remarkable how school is structured to reward students for repeating what authority tells them. Makes one wonder if there is a connection. Well, that is exactly the point, right? And yes, again, you might see that most of the people will tell you that that's the way it is, that's what should be done, this is the right thing. And they think that they are good people and good citizens for only repeating exactly what they have been well conditioned to think and say. And it has developed exactly more and more that very snitchy mentality, which we have seen very well in COVID. Again, COVID was a real test, right? They admit it now. Of course, it was a run test to see the level of compliance of the population for the next step, right? There was Agenda 21, now there is Agenda 2030, and they are moving quite fast, of course. At their scale, they have to go fast. That's why things are going worse and worse very quick now. But and what they mean to implement very soon as new steps into population control. And of course, we see the big attack on free speech everywhere now, and the governments are passing some bills against people who dare to express their own ideas online, especially, or post controversial things against the system, against the authority. So as usual, and it has always been, but of course more and more now, and unfortunately, as parents, when you are young, they're just part of that. They don't know it, of course. They think they know, but it's always the same. They just repeat what they are told, and because they operate within that framework unconsciously. But that's why you have been brainwashed to think that you're a good citizen when you repeat what the authority tell you, what the government has told you, that's right or wrong. And then after that, they have created the best propaganda way, because then it's citizens amongst themselves check on themselves that the other ones are operating in the same framework, where you have to be the white sheep amongst the white sheep. If you are the black sheep, of course you are finger pointed and blamed and bullied and kicked out. And so yeah, in one way, the system also doesn't like the people who like to think for themselves, who see through that, and who want to take care of themselves without the system, to be self-sustainable. But again, we know that it represents only a very few. That's why they don't worry too much, although they try, of course, to minimize that, because still they don't want that to influence others. And that's why we see the big attack now on that, right? That's why more and more land is privatized, and more and more farmlands, good land, is bought out. Bill Gates again has become the biggest private landowner in the States, and they still buy more and more. They destroy more and more forest, more and more things. So they want to destroy as much as possible the means for some people to live off the grid, right, and to be self-sustainable. And of course they spray everywhere. They spray the chemicals now, they spray everything. So again, even if you mean that you're actually there and you live that life, we know there's no clean air, clean water, or clean soil anywhere pretty much in the world anymore. So they have managed to reach that point, and still they managed to implement new laws, so-called laws, to erase any means or possibility for people to live by themselves. Of course, no, there is the new thing also that they call the 15-minute cities. So they will want to try to gather as much as possible of the population in cities, and that within 15 minutes everything will be accessible or allowed within that distance. And basically, ultimately, only if you're a good citizen, again, a good product of the system, you will be allowed to go outside and to enjoy things outside, like leisurely, again, the social credit system, which they have already in China, right? And so, yeah, it will be, again, the reward to be a good, well brainwashed citizen system. And that's what, again, goes back to that. That's why they instill that in you at school already, that you are rewarded only when you obey and relay what authority tells you or allows you or not into others too. And you become very limited that way, of course. There is that documentary that I've posted many times before from one of those guys who became a true official free man, and that's why it's so complicated and it takes a lot, because you have to really know the laws, so-called laws, and how to play around them. But the point is to realize that all this is a fictitious system, right? All this is man-made. It's just made up by some people. And again, each country with their so-called leaders, they develop supposedly those different systems, right? Executive and legislative and stuff. Legislative, well, understand that all this is just a fictitious play. It's just made up. It's fake. And that's why, in one way, different countries have different laws, because whatever, they try different ways to control the people. They try, from different angles, and that's part of the game, of the global game, which is why some people think it's a matrix or it's a simulation. It's like a game, video game, because some people have created different nations with different culture, different approach to things, different values, and see which one works the best on people. But it's all self-made by humans anyway, the madness, the real madness of humans in general. But in that documentary, which is called Ungrip, which he released the 11/11/11, it shows the steps and everything, and that's why it's so difficult, as I mean, not to detach from the system. They make it almost impossible, of course, or very impressive and challenging to get out of the system. So, but and the point is that people have become so assisted. That is the part where they manage to cunningly, sway you around or buy you, because the government pretends to be here for you and help you, and that's why they provide some tax relief or some money each time you have a kid, or some kind of free, or not free, of course, but medical help, whatever. And that's why when you are so assisted, it becomes very scary to become self-sustainable. That's the problem with the true sense of freedom too, is that freedom is scary, because suddenly you are fully responsible for yourself. And so, like this guy in that documentary explains, so suddenly you renounce everything from the system. So you get rid of your birth certificate, exactly that first contract with the state, and get rid of any credit card, any ID, any driving license, any paper, anything official you get rid of, right? You renounce them. So suddenly, of course, especially nowadays, you realize that your life will become a bit complicated. But that's the point also of living in self-sustainable way. And it's very scary for many, and that's why they make it very difficult. And again, you still have to actually now, because you have had those papers, and all those papers are contract with the states, right? So you have to justify in front of a judge with the right wording, the right legal wording, why you want to cancel all those contracts that you had with the state when you had an ID card or a healthcare card or a driving license. All these are papers that actually imply that you signed a contract with the state. And that's why in any of those, if you were reading the full information and the fine prints, you will see that they never belong to you. Your passport, your ID card, your this and that, they are never yours. They belong to the state, but they are shows that you signed a contract with the state and to go by their rules. Anyway, so of course, yeah, they don't like people who can think for themselves and can decide to become self-sustainable. And then, as you are young, already very young, and in some countries, of course, younger than others, and they only enforce a couple of aspects of culture, or in some others, like all aspects. But then, as some quotes have been around on the internet, the point is that brainwashing, conditioning, cultural programming shows up by how you define yourself compared to that. And that is that this is not natural, right? You're not born with that within your mind. But very soon after, you are told that this is your gender, this is your culture, this is your nationality, this is your religion, etc., etc. And you will spend the rest of your life defending those ideas most of the time. And that's why I couldn't care less about people who think they can think for themselves or that their opinion is of value when they still would tell me, I am proud of being this. Of course, I mean, there are enough religious brainwashed people, but at the end it still comes back to the notion of nationalism, which again confirms how the brainwashing and the conditioning has worked so well. Because I would still hear so many who will say, I am proud of being American, I'm proud of being Canadian, I'm proud to be German, I'm proud to be French. So only that sentence, that says enough. The brainwashing and the conditioning, the cultural programming has worked well. You can't think for yourself. You're just like a little kid that has been well taught at school. Yeah, you're just the good school kid, and that's the level you're at as far as autonomous way of thinking. As long as you tell me that you are proud of being this or that, and that's what makes you a good little Nazi. Yeah, that word. You know, Nazism. Originally the word is from National Socialism in Germany. And again, it's what it is. It is your nationalistic pride. It is to be a good patriot, right? So if you're a good patriot and proud to be of that country, you have the very well developed nationalistic mind, which is the Nazi mind, actually. That's simple. So you become a good Nazi soldier. Just like it was back then. And that will explain again how some people, and they have posted again like the interview of Goebbels' secretary, or whoever she was, the woman who was the secretary of one of the highest Nazi. And there is that famous image also of all those Germans, you know, raising the hand in a Nazi salute but one man in that picture, and that's exactly again the proportion. It's like less than 1% basically of the people who dare to go against. So like this secretary said, I hear so many people after telling me, wow, I could have never been part of that, the Nazi regime, the Nazi system, I would have never supported that. But put in the right context, at the time, with the whole propaganda as it is now in every country, the cultural propaganda, the peer pressure from everybody else who is also well brainwashed, and that's what you learn since the school system. Most of them would just follow the rules, as we see, and as COVID has exposed enough actually. So that's what cultural programming is about. And so most of the humans are, so some people again are so surprised, like completely baffled by what's happening in the world right now and how people could behave the way they do. But that's exactly what it is. That just confirms that the system has worked so well to go to that extent of programming, brainwashing, and how most people have developed their good little Nazi mind in them from their own cultural programming. Just like Terence McKenna had written also a long time ago, or said, so we are caged by our cultural programming, and culture is a mass hallucination, and when you step outside the mass hallucination, you see it for what it's worth. But again, of course, the point with that propaganda and brainwashing is to destroy as much as possible the capacity for you to get out of it. That's of course the purpose. And that's one point again, that compared to the Nazis, again the Germans were good at all that, right? That's why that happened back then, but now it's becoming global. That's why it's becoming normalized, and that's why people are not so offended, because it's just Nazism at the global scale now, from the TWEF and CIA false flag and what they have done, and with the brainwashing of the masses through devices and everything. But the point is a little history there. The Nazi at the time, I mean, those Germans were quite smart, of course, at that level. Just like they had also advanced medical knowledge, medical health knowledge, and inquisitive minds, and so it's known that they went to the East, and of course they wanted to discover what makes those spiritual people so advanced. So just a little wording thing, the Nazis meant to create that Aryan race, and Arya is actually a word that is used in Pali language at the time in the East, and that means exactly that. But Arya means the people who have reached a higher level of spirituality, and they have experienced enlightenment, nirvana. So that makes them, yes, by translation, some kind of superior beings, noble beings, the true noble beings in that sense. And in Buddhism, when you are Arya, you are not considered like human anymore. In that sense, you're not a regular human anymore. People really respect you, pay respect, because you're considered like a superior being for real, and as a noble, true noble being, because you have reached that stage. You have experienced enlightenment, so you are Arya. So the Germans back then, they were very into the esoteric things, right? And they tried to figure out what gives those people so much power, mental power, physical power, as it is become known. And they could meet some Hindus, yogis or monks, and it was known that they had those supernatural powers. So of course the Germans were very intrigued by that, and that's why they wanted to learn and practice those esoteric things. And then they decided to create the Aryan race as the superior race, again because they were smart leaders of a country, typically by still being so dumb, ignorant humans. They think so high of themselves, right? We are part of the elite of the German society or whatever, so they think that they are so good and that they can understand everything and practice and improve. But of course, this just at the intellectual level, just like in most of countries, those leaders, so-called leaders, and the elite groups, they think, and just like the one who control this world, they just think of themselves so high only from the intellectual level, but actually they don't practice what we know, like in Buddhism or as true yogis in India, which gives the real knowledge, the proper knowledge, and the real level to reach so high, and the extraordinary capacities. So, because actually to reach that high for real, like, you can only have a good mind with good intentions, but those people didn't have the best intention, right? So as long as you have the bad intentions, you are hindered to reach higher level. Of course, it goes together. So these Germans, still, they got the knowledge, they intellectualized it, of course, as most people who think they know in this society like to do. They try to intellectualize, like so-called scholars intellectualize Buddhism, Buddhist teachings, and then after they pretend to be scholars and to teach Buddhist studies at university. Actually, I knew some people like that also. I met some who are, PhD, right? PhD in Buddhist studies, teaching Buddhist studies at university. And I talked about a few things around Buddhism, Buddha's teachings, and I'm like, wow, okay, you actually know so little about the real, or you are so little proper understanding of the teachings and what Buddhism is really about. But anyway, that's again the same. It's exactly Western culture. Big egos who think they know, think of themselves superior, but not really superior. So that's what, of course, the Germans and Nazi did, right? They thought of themselves as so superior, intellectual elite that they could understand all this, but they brought the knowledge, right? And that's why they had to practice esotericism. And that's why they put Hitler in place, because he had the charisma also to gather the masses like that, and as the victor to manage to brainwash the masses through his voice and tone and charisma. But there were those guys also behind him who put him in place, right? I always forget, unfortunately, the title of that book that was really good to explain exactly that part, how he was put in place and by who, and those guys of the elite German society. But then, so there were all that, all those people who knew how to create propaganda, right, at the time, as it was known. And so they figured also at the same time that, if any individual can develop naturally their spiritual side, the introspective side, then they would figure out enough about the real meaning of life and existence and develop those strong capacities, mental and physical capacities. So the point with creating perfect modern slaves, dumbed down slaves, is to crush that, right? So you have to crush totally the capacity of going within and introspection in people. And that's why the cultural programming and brainwashing and formatting has been created, and to keep you as much as possible attached to the outside, to keep you at the most superficial level. And in one way, when you are young also, especially, just like like humans as barely evolved animals, they work by their five senses, basic five senses. And so the more you have developed a system that teases and work with your basic five senses and make you addicted to that, just like any human is live by addiction that way, then they manage to avoid you to be able to go within as much as possible. And so you will never develop exactly that true self inner capacity to develop as a full human being and experience the higher levels of existence and life and manage to go beyond, just to keep you down. So that's why they have developed more and more ways to control people and to convince you or to be addicted to the outside things and to satisfy to your senses basic pleasures, basic animal side, living by your five senses. I mean, sixth one is the thoughts, the emotions, but still only lately they have developed, of course, the best technology. Now they know enough, and we know what it is, because how many people are addicted to the devices now, the handheld devices. So that's the point. Now that you can go with your device everywhere and never get rid of it, or never separate from it, then it keeps controlling you all the time on the outside, keep your attention on the outside and satisfied to your senses like that. So you never have never take the time to really go alone, quiet, within, without any influence from the outside world. So it has been a step-by-step things for that. And again, back to the Germans and the America, as the new country that has been used to implement the new type of experiment on humans and new type of propaganda and brainwashing on their own population for a long time. That's why American culture is the most degenerate culture in the world. That's why they're always at the forefront of the new step, the further step into how crazier humans can be, schizophrenic, neurotic, whatever. I mean, we see that, of course, now with the woke culture, which was again the next step. And that's why they say they want to destroy the notion of gender and everything that goes against nature, right? Again, it's the same thing. This human society, especially the last 150 years, have tried as hard as possible to go against nature. That's the point again. To brainwash and condition the citizens is to make them go against nature, to become very superficial, artificial, like zombified, robotized humans, so they can control them. And it works, unfortunately, again at 80-90%. So that's why at the time they, of course, after the World War II, there was the big period of relief. We have to be nice now, no more war, right? No more this, right? But then the hippies came up and they had exactly the right values that every human should have. Peace and love, right? That's what life should be about amongst humans as evolved beings. And that's the point. Those leaders, they saw that happening, and that's why they crushed the hippie movement very quick. It was not too difficult, exactly because the peace and love mentality and no fight, no violence, and also big pot smokers with foggy brains. Then it was easy to crush all that, and that's why they started also to crush or destroy every hippie community and privatize things so that people couldn't have access to natural resources anymore easily or individually, freely. So, but that's the point, they have to kill the soul. Just like for Native Americans, as it has been known, again, the mentality is the same. and the white supremacist mentality, but in the West, but they do that to their own citizens too. Unfortunately, white people, some citizens feel sorry for what has been done to their own First Nation, Native Americans, right, in US or Canada, and the schools, right. But it was known there that the missionaries, so-called missionaries, teachers, were saying we have to kill the Indian in you. Basically, we have to kill your soul. But that's what the authorities have done to their own citizens too, afterwards, and that's what they keep doing. But even though in Buddhism we know there is no soul as such, but it's more like we have to erase anything that is inside, within, genuine, natural, authentic in you, and to make you a very superficial, artificial, brainwashed robot human. And so at the time came Mr. Bernays, again I've advised. So one movie I've mentioned many times, of course, and typically again now it's not easily found on YouTube as it was back then, for free, but it's called The Green Beautiful, or The Beautiful Green, which is the French comedy, light comedy, but that woman exposed a lot about the right principle and exactly about what this crazy society is about and the values that they want to make you have, to live by. Again, materialism, consumerism, most superficial, narcissism, all about the image. So it generates a lot of economy and productivity and addiction to what the system is about, versus the inner natural capacities that any human have to become a spiritual being, a very evolved being, actually, a wise being. So that movie exposes a lot of that. Again, it's basically talking about that utopic society, and as an utopia, again, it's a word that usually implies it's a nice dream, but it's not going to happen. But again, it's the idea that the authorities have managed to instill in people that utopia is so. It's a nice dream, but it cannot be done. But actually it could, if the majority of humans suddenly decided to be good human, not little Nazis. And it's all about ratio, right? It's just like natural effect. So, but again, that's why the brainwashing and the conditioning has worked. Cultural conditioning works everywhere the same, because at the end it's just like we saw with COVID. So ultimately, 70%, 80% of the population took the shots. So then they're happy to see that. Then that's enough. Good ratio for them. And of course, they try to go after the other ones, and they will go again soon enough after the ones who still want to go against the rules and the system. I mean, the Nazi woman at the head of the European Union now, they're already talking again about a pass, right? The digital ID and the digital pass, which will be given to the people who are fully vaccinated. So they're actually in the process of implementing that in Europe, and of course they are already try to motivate you to take the shot. Now the season is coming, right? The season is coming. Something big is coming. Bill Gates, again, also the big implementer of the system agenda, who is in charge of the WHO and the policies around, who likes to experiment with vaccine. He's saying that soon enough we will have either a big war or a big pandemic, or both probably. So they make sure that they can have more control. But anyway, Mr. Bernays was the nephew of Freud, so he had an idea of what psychology is about, of course. And at the time, again, America is starting to turn really, really dark with the intentions, of how to control the mass population. And especially after the war, of course, and CIA is what it is, the main agent of the nastiest things in the world with the false flags. Again, false flag is part of the propaganda that works well, right? To make people believe some things, but it's the opposite, of course, that's the truth. So, and that's why CIA was created also after the war. Anyway, and all the experiments that they have done on people that we know a bit more now, slowly. So Mr. Bernays, also I always recommend to watch those documentaries that are called The Century of the Self, and especially the number 2, which is that notion of, again, as far as the brainwashing is concerned, is called the implied consent, which again was about, in COVID was very exposed, but in general the system, the government works by that. That's how the laws work, actually. Again, the idea of the laws being laws is because it's implied consent. As I mentioned before, it's just it's a fictitious play. Every laws, so-called, are just fictitious. It's just man-made. It's made up by some people. But that's why, like, the guy who become a free man, he dares to challenge those as such, because they are man-made. And if you really don't go by those and prove that they are man-made and they were implemented under duress at the time on a piece of paper by the King John, the Magna Carta and everything, so you can challenge, I mean, officially, to see that this is all made up. It's out of thin air, right? It has nothing to do with the real laws of nature, the universal law that rule life, actually. It's just a bunch of people who just make up those things. But then, because the population is so well brainwashed, so well conditioned, and not to go against anymore the real authority, then they use the implied consent factor, which means that people just accept without really questioning, and then they take it as a law because the majority just goes by that. So anyway, the documentary is The Century of the Self, and the number 2, the manufacturing of consent. Mr. Bernays, after that, and America, of course, like it has done with many people, and like America and CIA, of course, has done with quite a few famous Nazis, higher guys in science, in medical science. They got hired, right, in America, because America was implementing the very nasty agenda already, and so they took the ones who knew. It's easy, again, it was America, same thing, American dream back then, right? It's funny that some people still think there's an American dream. I mean, unfortunately, in the third world countries, they still look up at the West and America as if it was still worth moving there, but it's one of the nastiest countries as far exactly as disrespect to their own citizen and using its own population to experiment on, as we see now, in every way, from poisoned water to chemtrails in the skies to, all the brainwashing program through frequencies. And COVID has been made by these people, of course, and now the 5G towers and everything, and yeah, it's at every level. But Mr. Bernays, of course, got hired to develop that system of, again, simple, how to control the masses, how to make the masses think the way we want, how to make the masses buy things that they don't need. So Bernays at the time knew it, it's propaganda, but propaganda had a bad rep as a word, right? So he's the one who created the word public relation. So the need sounds much better, and that's exactly one of the start of the good brainwashing, using psychology and the proper wording of things, the sneaky, cunning wording of things, which is still used in sales. That's the point, that's why they're called sales, to sell you something, is to present things the proper way under the right wording to make you think it's good for you. That's what governments are doing to their own citizens all the time. So Bernays came up with the word public relation, and at the end, basically, he's the one who developed the whole concept of publicity and marketing. And that's why suddenly after the war in 50s and 60s, especially America, then publicity became the huge thing. And it worked so well. And again, at the same time, new technology came up, right? So before it was radio, it was only through the ears. And then they figured, oh, now there is TV. TV is popular, and TV is straight through the eyes, and the eyes go actually more direct to the brain. So they figured, and something that also known as subliminal messages, right, in commercials. So anyway, they came up with all that publicity and marketing, and why publicity has exploded, right? And in the 80s and 90s, suddenly that became the huge thing. You become a publicist, you work in marketing. They had unlimited budget because they figured, for me it was simple. I knew this was so subversive. Actually, I was in high school, and I could figure already the psychology around publicity and commercial, but also that made me good in a school work at that, so to show that I had understood what it's about. But so that became the big thing, and unlimited budget, because like my teacher had told me, at the time, that was when publicity became big and big in Europe, at least, after America had already developed it, of course, so much. But he said, yes, many people are like, well, no, we know it's publicity. We know they try to tease us with our sensitive fibers to buy some things. We know, blah, blah, blah. But on average, in every company, between the companies who said, okay, we don't really need publicity, we have a good reputation already, we sell well or whatever, and the one who actually invested in publicity, in commercials, suddenly the turnover for the money, the business, went from a factor 1 to 8 or 9. So it was clear. So that's why suddenly publicity became the huge thing. And again, publicity commercials only, and as you saw, of course, on TV, it came more and more and more everywhere. So that only confirms again how easy it is to condition and brainwash people. And many times they will use also the cultural aspect of it, or your nationalistic fiber. But that's what happened. But if you watch the documentary, you will see. And but that also confirms and what is exactly cultural programming and the brainwashing. And yes, for example, if you as far as screens go, and TV first, and the modern TV is just like our devices now. Again, they have figured the frequency of light to use to reach deeper in your brain, unconsciously, of course, so that the message goes through. And as much, again, as many think that they're aware of that, if you actually check that you don't use any device for a long time, exactly if you go in a retreat, especially a silent meditation retreat where also you have your eyes closed most of the time, then you come out of it and you look at the screen and you will be like, wow, like you can't really look at the screen for a while. There was also an article I saw lately of a guy who has done that, and with cell phone, and then came out, and he said first he couldn't even put his phone in color mode. He had to put it in black and white mode in one way, to just be able to look at it. But then you get used to it, right? It's like anything, any brainwashing conditioning is step by step, progressive, but it works well, right? That's why they have been doing that for over generations and pushing further and further. And of course, with new technology, it works pretty good. But for example, hopefully, for example, you could experience that one day if you are deep enough in meditation. and manage to concentrate, no matter what, again, neuroscience think it knows about the different part of the brain working with what emotion or whatever sense. Again, physically, as I mentioned before, they keep you at the most superficial level, right? So you have your five senses, and then you react constantly compared to the five senses. I have made the other audio on that. So your thinking and emotional reaction happen at the superficial level of the brain too, that way. No matter what you experience, or no matter what sense is teased, and your reaction and your thinking around that and your emotion will be at the superficial level of the brain, in the front part actually, always at the superficial level. But if you manage to get into proper meditation mode and start to relax and center, you will actually physically experience that your attention moves from the superficial part of the brain and towards the center of the brain. And again, another thing that has been more and more known, which also, like they say in those documentaries, the system, the leaders don't want people to know, and they try to mess with that, is how important the pineal gland is. And the pineal gland is really at the center, right? Deep down there. The pineal gland, yes, is very important and is a receptor for many energies like that, and yeah. So that's why they have been trying to mess up with your pineal gland also a lot, and that's the point. So you would see that if you can move, or if you can experience physically the move of your attention, reaction, thinking from the superficial part of the brain, really at the edge of your brain by your skull, and it's gonna move and step back. And again, that's the whole, true notion of taking distance from the world, taking distance and stepping back from what's happening around you, to basically gain objectivity, right? To see things for what they really are. And that's exactly where the wisdom comes in, to have that ability to not being caught up constantly all the time as we are, that's the point, with our senses being teased thousands or millions of times per day, but to manage to take the distance. And that's why the system has developed this technology and everything, and all the devices that you can carry with you anywhere, so that you are the most constantly stimulated from the outside world for your senses. And of course there is the basic ones of taste. People enjoy the food, that kind of food, but again, through the food they have put the right chemical to affect the specific part of the brain or the specific hormones. Again, that's why they have created obesity and the whole sweet things, sugary things and everything, but to control the people like that, and to cancel again or destroy the natural ability to have some objectivity in your mind, and to be able to control yourself, to control your mind, to control your response to stimulus. That they have figured that one out actually chemically also. So then they know what chemicals to put in the air, in your food, so that it will go in the right spot in the brain or in your hormones. So, but actually, if you could, I hope that will give you a sign if you can go in meditation, and as you can really relax, go within, center your attention right on the breath or anything, and then suddenly you can feel your attention separating from the surface of the brain, the the superficial level and start to be really more centered within the brain and going towards that deeper level. And that's what afterwards, like when we practice in Vipassana, for example, at the beginning also when you tell people to scan the body, like your attention goes along the body to different parts of the body, like many people would say, well, I feel that my eyes have to go there. You see, that's what confirms also. If we ask you to just take your attention to a certain part of the body, actually, unconsciously, your eyes will also follow and want to go there from the eyes. That shows again how you are so used to be so stimulated from the outside and have no control of that. But afterwards, then you can reach that level where you have everything centered in the mind, and you have been able to take distance from the outer part, and from being centered, then you can start to become aware of everything at once. And that's the point of being centered like that, and have a centered attention. Then you have the very strong focus, and you can look objectively at things because you can see things from a distance for what they are again. So hopefully that could be one stage that will confirm at least that you can start to take distance from that conditioning from the outside. But as I meant anyway, so and unfortunately, so many people say that they are aware or awake, obviously still live by the total conditioning, because I mean it's easy to see from the outside how much again they mention or behave in a way that they are very self-concerned, right? Self-conscious. And of course one big thing is the image. I won't go there too much on that, but yeah. But yeah, it's a lot about, again, the ego and me all the time, which again has been developed, enhanced, because that's what it is from birth. Again, parents are happy to say, oh, look at my kid, my newborn kid, and what do? It's like, oh, look, it's developing its senses, or the response to senses. Well, in true reality, that kid is actually developing its own conditioning and addiction to whatever the senses receive, the stimulus. And that's why it will make it harder and harder the longer you do that in life. But that's only what it is. So for me, I'm not happy to see any young kid, baby, and the parents or the people around being happy for that, to see that, because I'm like, yeah, that's just self-conditioning being developed more and more and more, and has to do with the personality, which is a heritage from the previous karma, from the previous lives. So there's already that baggage from the previous life, and then for most people they keep adding more in the new life, as again what they will define themselves by later on, by the classic I like this, I don't like that, and I want this, I don't want that. So that's what there is, the self-conditioning already that way, and then the system has developed, of course, enough means now to go very deep inside you early on. First, of course, education system, preschool, right? I mean, so yeah, basically kids are not allowed to have a proper childhood anymore, right? Again, at school we never teach you the worthy topics of life, right? The useful topics of life. As for the people who know how to live a very simple life of greed, and the very basic is very simple actually, and that's the point. It's the happy life is the simple life, and life could be very simple. And it's about satisfying to the basic needs as we know in survival, water, food, fire, shelter, or shelter, fire, depending where. And that's what life is about. Again, in that movie, The Beautiful Green, that's actually what they kind of show you. And then you should spend the rest of the time trying to evolve as a human being, as becoming a wise, aware being, and transcend life, transcend existence. That's where the ultimate truth is. And life could be that simple, which is what is about for those noble beings in Buddhism, the ones who have renunciated the whole modern life things and gimmicks and toys and habits and addictions for the sensory pleasures. So, but most of the time people will spend their whole life developing more and more addiction and dependency and self-conditioning at the same time as the cultural conditioning and programming. And that's why it's interesting for me also that part with the Buddhist cultures, right? Again, the people think as far as Buddhists that they know Dhamma pretty well, but they don't understand that they are still conditioned by those values which have become, yes, religious in the sense of brainwashing religious and conditioning. So again, they repeat what they have been told, what they learned since they are young, even though it's supposed to be the teaching of the Buddha, but they just repeat out of good brainwashing and conditioning, which is why actually in everyday life they still contradict themselves as not applying all the time, every day, the real teachings of the Buddha. And that's why the whole notion of okay, I'm being bad now, but that's okay, and I will try to make amend to that, right? And that's again what most people do, as amend most of the people at the little Nazi side in them is the whole thing of bad and good, right? In every human. So many humans like to think of themselves as good or good intended, but actually they are there is the bad side. And again, there's no excuse of people saying, well, it's okay to be a little bit bad. No, if you have that mentality, you would just keep accumulating the bad side. You are in that direction. You're not in the good direction as long as you think it's okay to have a little bit of bad in you or do a little bit of bad. So we have a saying in French, just because it rhymes in French, but it says something like, who steals an egg steals a cow. And it's just that it's not about the size of being bad, it's not about how much bad you are, it's about thinking that it's okay to be somewhat bad, little or more, it doesn't matter. So at the end, that's just how it works. This is the real laws. These are the laws of nature, the universal law. So there is unfortunately that self-conditioning in life, and again, the government and the leaders exactly try to make you think like that it's not so bad to be bad. But so you become worse and worse and worse, and you become more and more part of them, exactly, part of their agenda, and you try to transfer that in the people around you, unconsciously, which is the best propaganda. So, and what I wanted to say on the other hand is also the notion of observation. See, that's the point again. Brainwashing and conditioning happens just like with the kids, because they just receive in and imprint and not take distance. But taking distance is to learn to observe observe objectively things. And that's the best quality, one of the best quality, of course. As I meant, the best quality a human can have is the humility to know that one that doesn't know or doesn't know enough and should be a learner. And part of that goes through that, to learning to observe things, to take distance and really observe outside instead of being in instant gratification, instant stimulation through devices or social connection. Again, they have managed to make people so dependent on the so-called social connection. I mean, they have pushed it now from originally a long time ago, people saying we are social beings, we need the social interaction, societies where people have nice social interaction are happiest people, blah, blah, blah. And now they have pushed it to the extreme, of course, through social media, through your devices, so they can control you or your brain through the frequencies and the screens, and also through your addiction to how the interaction goes on your social media, as far as being totally dependent and on how many likes, how many comments people get on the social media platforms. But again, that's part of it is having taken away again the ability to observe and observe objectively, taking distance from things, from what's happening around, and observe, like, with the trained eye, with wisdom, and trying to see through the shadows of the culture, like the other famous quote from whoever it is, the one who speaks the truth is the one who has been able to see through the shadows of its society, through objective observation, not being caught in it, being able to take distance and observe. And there's a lot to learn by observing properly things instead of being spoon-fed. Again, that's the point. The system is like that. That's why also they have lowered the teachings at school and the level of the exams, the difficulty of the exam. Again, another thing. Already at my time, exactly, I realized that, and that was really the beginning of the big shift and dumbing down of the population, right? To program, condition easily the population, you just dumb them down. The lowest common denominator has been the rule after the war, and we see that now, and that's exactly what it is. People are so uncultured. The new generation, they know nothing about real life except how to use quickly technology and devices, but no real life skills at all, and that's part of the point. So again, it starts early, and the knowledge has been lowered and lowered for the worthy knowledge, real cultural knowledge, actually, in that sense. And the exams have been made easier and easier to make people believe that they are worth, that they are successful, so they get the reward. Again, the whole notion of the reward program thing. Authority rewards you, you should be proud. Again, the pride and proud. As I meant before, again, how people are proud to be this nationality or this nationality, which is very immature. And you are being violent, as Krishnamurti has explained also that way, when you are proud and you announced very clearly that you are this nationality or this nationality, or you are this religion or other things, you are being violent. You are exactly exposing how you are proud to be different from others and dissociate and divide from others. Again, the whole divide, right? As it is known now and exposed on internet, the technique also that these countries are using and the leaders are using is to divide and conquer. So you divide people like that exactly by creating strong cultural, religious instinct, not instinct, I guess, strong opinion on that in the brain artificially. It's all artificially, it's all made up, so that people become proud of that they think it's their nature, is their life is about that. So you have totally forgotten what your true nature is about, which is to be in accordance and in harmony to nature. And that's why you will never be happy, and you will always stress and have a latent anxiety to satisfy to those factors or parameters that your culture has put inside your brain. And that's why, again, many people pretend to be there for each other, to help each other, but you can see that in every culture the gossiping works so well. It's exactly that, again, to confirm that people think it's part of them, all those notions of culture, religion, gender, values, whatever, and they want to make sure that the other people around go by the same, instead of respecting the people who actually want to detach from that, to live according to the real natural laws, in harmony with nature, which makes one peaceful and harmonious within. And that's also what the Buddha did, of course. The point is that the Buddha became a rebel. Oh yeah, so that yesterday I have the video from Osho, which he exposes, of course, very well all that, as he was famous for. But the whole conditioning, no society wants you to become self-thinking individual, but they want to program you through all those parameters that you supposedly will be proud of defining yourself by later on in life. And you will spend your life stressing about that, and stressing that on others, trying to enforce that onto others. But the Buddha became enlightened and unconditioned only because he dared to break the rules, break the culture, became a rebel, and stepped out of that whole cultural programming and conditioning. So that's the only way to actually become, or start to have, a true sense of freedom in life, and a true sense of peace and harmony within, and connection to the real nature and beyond life and existence, is by detaching completely, manage to make the step through. But it's a very hard one, because they have become, of course, so good and using every means possible to completely control and condition, and they are going for it now. They will go to the next steps again very soon. So yeah, it's a hard one, and that's how it's made, right? But that's also the point of a government. At the end, as it is known, if you had only wise humans around, nobody needs any government to figure out how to live in harmony in a society and in harmony with one's environment. So as much, again, as the government pretends to be there for what it was supposed to be originally, to serve the people and the people's interest, just to manage the whole thing, of course we know what it is now, we can see, but it's totally the opposite to an extent that most people still can't imagine. And it's amazing that some people still watch the news, the mainstream media, and still want to believe some of what it says there. But again, it shows that it has worked really well. But there is no government in the world right now which has its citizens' interest in mind. That's why they are totally corrupt everywhere, of course. And we can see that now, and that's why also, because they are part of that system, from the people who truly control the world with that
nastiest intention, the most evil plan in mind. That's why they are protected, and that's why now there's no way to protest anymore, right? If you have seen the evolution, no more protest allowed anymore. Otherwise, it is faced by sheer violence from the guys in uniform that they send to you anyway. There is a reason for that. So yeah, if you can't speak against your government anymore, it means that the government is really against the people. And then of course they managed to create the whole things internationally to pretend and sustain that notion of nations, territories, religions, but it's all the same everywhere. And there is no country in the world that actually has intelligent people. Of course, it would be nice to say we want to make a country, an area of the world for intelligent humans who can live in harmony with themselves, with each other, and towards nature, which is the point. The only way to be harmonious is to respect the planet, right, and the environment. But and to live by nature's law. But obviously, it's not possible. Every area has been acquired by any form of government or so-called authority, exactly for that purpose, to not allow that to happen. And if there was any place on earth where good people could go and decide to have this society, the bad ones would find an excuse to come and destroy it anyway. So, and that is exactly what this human society is about right now. Grim image, yes, but still about reality. And that's why the Buddha said, make an island of yourself and save yourself first. And once you have managed to save yourself from that whole conditioning, cultural programming, brainwashing, then you know how to properly help others. That's another topic that I have also against the new agey kind of counselors, psychotherapists, or whatever, all those people who mean to help others, but while being still caught up in the personal issues and not really actually helping others, but rather make others to fit in that crazy modern human society. So, but I know many people will say, yeah, we know all that already. But look in the mirror and see already if you are not a bit of fake, or try to change your aspect. If you have a little worry about your image that you see in the mirror already, how you look, then you're already part of it, of course. Just a full part of that, fully involved part of the system and that madness of conditioning and brainwashing and cultural influence. But yeah, it's a hard one to get out, but as much as possible, as usual, as much as you think you're aware of some things, take some time alone, detach, really go in retreat, silent retreat, isolate yourself from all that. That's why now, there are some official narratives in the medical field, so-called experts, again, as we know now, most of or many experts are sold out, of course. Bribed by the system, of course. That's pretty sad, right? That so many doctors, so-called doctors, are actually sold out and bribed by pharmaceutical and the whole industry and the government to promote very unhealthy ways of living. But that's how it is. That's how much the point it has reached now. But so, as much as they say to be careful with being alone, isolated, yes, for some you have to be careful, but still, if you could take some real time off any connection with that world around you, your usual world that you have made yourself dependent on, and go within, only spend time quiet within, go inside, then you will discover how much you are part of it still, and see it for what it's worth, and see it for what it is, the mass hallucination that has been going on. And then you still will find some connection to really worthy things that have to do with the real way of life, which is connection to nature, natural things, natural ways, and becoming authentic again, and balanced, and find more peace and harmony within.